Well, hello there. My name is Ron Hogue, and I'm with CamMastery.com, where you can go to learn how to make great videos with Camtasia. Once a week, usually on Sunday at this time, I come in and I answer some questions that I get throughout the week. And so that's hopefully why you're here. As I go through, I have a few things I want to show you, and I'll tell you what we're going to talk about today. The three questions, or the three things I want to cover, are number one, standalone projects, number two, customizing projects, and number three, asset management. So let's look at this first question, and it came in just literally minutes ago, and it said, "Hey Ron, question about your thoughts on creating Camtasia projects as standalone projects, or do you normally not do that? Thanks." So the question came up in a video that I had posted on YouTube about updating media. And so in that video, I was talking about how you can reuse some video or change something in a video. So let's say, for example, you recorded a video and the screenshot has changed, and you say, "Oh, everything else in the video is good. The narration, the music, the pace, everything is good, except I just want to change this one screenshot. How can I do that?" And I said, well, you can just right click and you can update media and point to the new screenshot file. And so I guess the question was really about, do you have to, are you always reusing projects, or don't you make them standalone? And so the short answer is I do make them standalone projects. The idea for that particular video was really just, if you're doing an update to your content for some reason, then it's very easy to update the media as well in Camtasia. So yes, I create projects all the time. They're always standalone projects. The only time I go back and reuse a project is when I have to do an update to it. All right. Question two, Steve said he had a question about the spray paint element or project that I provided. So last week on the live stream, I provided access to a zip file, and I think I put the link in the chat, but I'm going to try again. So my chat is working again this week. Let me just put that link to spray paint asset. I think you'll already see it, but let me just throw it in one more time. There it is. So he was saying, Steve was like, "Hey, I have a question about this. How do you make this work? I can download it and that's fine. That's a zip file, but what do I do with this?" So let's head over to Camtasia and take a look at what I would do with this spray paint asset. The first thing I want to do is grab that asset, and I put it in the wrong folder. I think I put it back in maybe this folder. Nope, this folder. Let's see. Nope, I think it was. There it is. I'm just going to cut that real quick, put it in today's folder. So you can see here that I do use folders for all of my live streams and for my projects. So that's something else I'll talk about a little later. So here's that spray paint stencil asset. I don't know if I've tried this before. I'm going to try just drag this over into the media bin. All right, so that's one way to bring in the zipped project. I'm going to cancel and show you typically how I do it is I go to File, and then I do, where's my zipped project? Somewhere it says zipped project. I'm sure it does. Import. There we go. And then zipped project. So this is where I would go in the upper left, import and zipped project. But instead, I said, you know what? I have it right here. Let's just drag it to the not the recycle bin, the media bin. And here it says, okay, I'm going to import this zipped project. Here's the name of it, and import it into what project directory. And so it's saying, do you want it to go in this particular project directory? And I want it to go into my video directory. So I'm going to go to the directory that I'm working in now, which is today's date. And I will select that folder, and it says open the project after import. That sounds great. I'll go ahead and open it. So this is the first step, is just getting in and opening the project, just importing the zip project into Camtasia. Now that it's in Camtasia, we want to take a look at what we can do with it. So as a zipped project, it could be helpful to you, but it might not. Might not be helpful in its own regard. So one of the things I would do specifically to Steve, or to say to Steve, is when you want to use this, you probably want to customize this for yourself. So I used the text, track mats rock, but you probably don't want to use that. You probably want to say anything else. So I will literally say anything else. And there it is. And then we'll go through and then we'll spray paint over anything else. And then I'll need to come over here and I will need to update the text here as well, and I don't remember exactly where it is. There it is. So I'll go in here, and I'll try. I might have to ungroup or something like that. So I would go in here. I want to edit this text, but there's content over top of it. So you would need to edit this. I guess I probably should have walked through this first. So let me do this. I'm going to go ahead and ungroup this, and then expand this group. Hide this track that's above. Nope, not that one. Hide this track. There we go. Then I can go in and edit this again. And I said, what, anything else on that side. Then I'll bring this back. And then I will group these again. So Control G is what I'm going to use to group. And then if I remember correctly, I used the transition for the group. So I'll go to my transitions. And I did a page roll. So I'll just add that back to the end. I only want it at the end. All right. So let's try this, and I'll go through and play it. Anything else? Spray paints over it. And then it peels it away. Okay, yep, and I forgot I need to edit it down here as well. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out so that there's nothing over top of it. So bring it out here, expand the group. It says Track Mats Rock. And we're going to come out to here. There we go. And we're going to make it say anything else. And then I'll drag it back to where it was. So now, if I play through this, anything else, we spray paint over it, we peel it back and it says anything else. Okay, so I had to go through and edit a couple of different things in there. So this is what I would do, first of all, to reuse this asset, is to update the text in there for it to be something that's relevant to you. So that's number one. I think the latter part of your question is about how we can reuse this for other projects. And that's what I want to talk about, both to answer this question and to go into the next part about managing projects. So let's take this project and, or let's take this content that we created and let's kind of bundle it all together into something that we can reuse in future Camtasia projects. So back to Camtasia, what I would do is if I look at this, I would grab all of these items. A quick way to do that is just click anywhere down here in the timeline. I'm going to do a Control A, or you could do a Command A if you were on the Mac, to select everything. And then if I right click inside, you can see there's an Add to Library, which happens to be Control Shift A. Okay, so if I just deselect everything real quick, I can do Control A to select all, then Control Shift A to add it to the library. All right, and so then I would say something like, this is my spray paint, is what I'll call it. It asks me what library I want to put it in. I'll just leave it in the default library, and I'll use the canvas size. That's all great. I'll click OK. It copies that file then onto a specific place on the hard drive, and now I have this asset in the library default called spray paint. So this is how I would, one, customize that asset, and then two, how I would save it. So let's talk about how I would manage assets in Camtasia, and that's really what I want to focus on for the last part of this session. So thinking about asset management, I have some things that are related to the entire project, and then things that are specific to a project. So the first thing I do is project folder, and you saw, if I go back to my Camtasia screen here and I jump over, when I went here, let's just make that nice and big. I went, and you can see these are all the weeks that I went live, and I have a folder literally for every project. And so when you go in, if we want to look at last week's, I can double click last week's. I have all the files that I needed in there, not very many. I think the first week I had more. Nope, the first week I didn't have any. There we go. So here's a week where I had a lot of things in that folder that I needed to talk about. And so hopefully everything you need is within that folder. That's the goal. And that helps just to keep your projects organized so that when you need to go back and make those updates, like I talked about earlier in the video, you have everything in one place. So that's one way to manage our assets. The next thing I want to talk about is a zipped project. So you've seen this now already in this video where I provided you with a zipped project. You can download and customize that yourself. So how would you create your own zipped project? Well, To do that, we would go over to Camtasia, and this is what I did at the end, was I went to File, Export, Zipped Project. Okay, File, Export, Zipped Project. And then here it's like, well, what do you want to save this as? And I called it Spray Paint, and or Spray Paint Stencil, I guess it was. And it has the zip files type. We're not going to change that for any reason. And I click Save, and then I have that file that's ready. And an advantage for doing this is that you can share your projects with other people. So you saw how I created something, and I was able to share it with you, assuming you have Camtasia 2020 or newer, then you're able to use it just fine. So that's why we would use these zip projects, is to share from one computer or one machine, one user, over to another computer, machine, or user. Okay, so that is the next item. Next are packages. Now, packages are a little bit different. And I'll show you what these packages look like. So we'll jump over to Camtasia again. I can go to File and export a package. And let me just zoom in here a little bit so you can see this a little easier. File, Export Package. Now, when I click this, what we'll see is we have some different options here for what we're truly exporting. So a package is a lot of things. It's multiple things that we're exporting possibly at the same time. It could be templates, which we'll talk about next, themes, which we'll talk about at the end, libraries, shortcuts, favorites, tools. We'll talk about all of these things, but what we're saying here in an export package is that I can summarize, or I can collect all of those things and put them in a single file to share with, again, another machine, another user. If there are things that I'm using, for example, in a corporate environment, and I say, well, I have a specific video and specific audio and specific color scheme that I want to use, and I want everybody in my organization to use that, I can zip it and say, here, give a link to that shared location and say, everybody use these assets whenever creating videos in Camtasia. Or if I'm creating videos on my own, but I need a little bit of help, so I get a virtual assistant or an external editor, and I say, oh, I want this editor to use these assets. This is another way that I would do that, is I would zip these together. I would provide all of these to my editor and say, when I make these videos, please use these zipped assets whenever creating videos for me. Okay, so that is the next part under packages. Next is templates, and hopefully we've seen templates in the past. First of all, what is a template? When we talk about templates, we're thinking about how we can create like a framework for Camtasia that all we need to do is drag and drop things into a container. So for example, let's head over to Camtasia. What I've seen, or what I've done is, we'll cancel out of this, is I'll go to File, and what I can do is save this spray paint as its own template. So I can say, I want to save project as template, and we can see that there in the upper left. File, save project as template. And then when I do that, it says, okay, what do you want to call this template? And so if I wanted this to be its own template, like this is the whole file, then I could save it this way. Now, a template by itself isn't, or a template like this maybe isn't the best use of a template. Like I said, it's usually better to replace items. So maybe you want to have your own background, like your own brick wall. So let's go back to Camtasia. I'll cancel out of this. And instead what I could do, like if I wanted this brick wall to be something else, I can right click this and I can say convert this background, whatever it is, to a placeholder. And so now I have this placeholder. So now, oh, I had everything selected. We don't want that. Let me Control Z to undo that. There we go. I just want this item at the bottom selected. So let me try that again. Right click, convert to placeholder, or you can see it's Control Alt P. So there's the placeholder. It still comes in. It does its spray paint thing. It peels away, and there it is. But now I can put any background I want on that. And so what I might do is find a different file, a different asset. I don't know. Do I have? I'm sure I have. Let's find one. I think I have something that I could use. Let's see if I have an image file or something here. Okay, I have a logo file. So this isn't going to look great, but I'll still grab it and I'll drag it down here. And when I drag it, I see that it changes to green. So I'm going to let go. And there's my image now as the background. And then it spray paints over that and then peels away. So, you know, if I wanted to, I could make this, you know, much larger like this, center it up, right? You can do some sort of editing to it. And there it is, you know, and it doesn't look great with the yellow spray paint on a white background. But this is the idea. We can, now I'll just Control Z to undo all of those changes. I just want it as a placeholder. So that's really the best way for you to use a template, is to create these placeholders for your videos, for your images, maybe even for audio, like if you're doing a voiceover, like a narration or something like that. Use all those as placeholders, then create that thing as a template, and then save it as a template. Now, if I want to use Camtasia, or I want to use this template, or any template, I can go to File, New Project from Template, and then, well, you can see, for example, I have the Free Lesson Friday template. So if I just, I can double click this. I don't need to save any changes there. Again, I would typically save it, do a save as. You can see that I have this intro that talks about Free Lesson Friday, and then all I need to do is drag the lesson in here. Right, so here's all the intro. It's the same intro every time. And then I just have a placeholder at the bottom for the lesson that I want people to see. And so all I need to do is, I actually even have a folder. If I go, well, you can trust me. I have a folder that is specific for lessons. And these, you know, I have like the next, I don't know, 8 to 9 weeks, I think, planned out for the Free Lesson Fridays that I'm going to release to you. So that's it. I can just drag it in. I have that template ready to go. When it's time to create the Free Lesson Friday, the template helps me do that. Okay, enough on templates. Let's now look at the next part. So thinking about the different elements in the project, the library. So we talked about the library a little bit. Let's look back at Camtasia. You can see on the left, I have a library link. Of course, this is in Camtasia 2020. In some previous versions, you might need to go to Media first and then to Library. I'm going to try and open Camtasia 2019 on my other monitor here and see if Library is still there. I think it's there in 2019, but it's not. I think it's under Media in 20. Yeah, so just looking at, I'll just bring it over real quick. So here's Camtasia 2019. There is still that library link, but in older versions, like I believe 2018 and older, you have to go to Media first, and then there's another tab at the top for the library. But here in the library, you can see I've actually created multiple libraries. So we talked first about the default library, and the default library is just the one that comes with Camtasia. But you can see I've created multiple libraries. So for example, there's this Cam Answers library where I have, you know, background music and different things like that. I have something called Cam Builder, where, you know, you can see that rocket countdown that I use for the beginning of my live feeds, you know, and some different selections, different assets that I've put in these groups called libraries. So to use a library, I would go to the library, choose the drop down at the top. And again, you probably only have default, or you might have Camtasia 2020 and default, but you would want to go down, and you can see the first thing you might want to do is to create a new library. So if we look at that, I'll click Create New Library, and then we need to give that library a name. And if we wanted to, we could copy the assets from another library, but we would just say, let's create a new library. So that's how I was able to create these placeholders, or these, well, they're libraries, these collections of assets that I want to use. Then within the library, you can see, for example, in the Camtasia 2020 library, they have folders for different elements like icons and intros and lower thirds. If you look at Cam Builder, for example, I have elements, scenes, titles, typography, and if I expand those, then I can see what's within, you know, the collection of items within that library. So if I wanted to use any of those, I could do that. And then even within typography, I have a section called Inverted, and then I have multiple inverted elements that are available there. So if we wanted to create a folder, we just right-click inside. We say we want a new folder, and this is my example folder. And so there it is. There's my example. And if I need to, I can grab this and drag it into example, and now it's there within the example folder, or I can drag it back out. I say, no, I don't want it in that folder, or I can right-click the folder. I say, I don't really want this. Let's go ahead and delete that, and we'll delete it. So what Camtasia does is it saves these elements in the library, these different libraries on your hard drive. And then that way it's able to use these in future projects. So you open up any project, you can use whatever is in your library. Now, there is one downside to this, or maybe not a downside. I will say if you remove something from your library, then it will warn you that it won't be available to you anymore for the projects that used it. So what happens is when you save your project, it saves the pointer to where it is in the library. So if I used like the Free Lesson Friday, for example, I used that. Well, no, that was a template. If I used any of these assets, I used the Rocket Countdown asset, for example, and I created a video, and then later I deleted that, or I even moved that Rocket asset from the library. If it's not in the library, then projects that used that asset won't be able to use it again because Camtasia won't be able to find it. Okay, so that would be like one of the downsides. And Camtasia does warn you. If I go back to Camtasia and I say something like, I go here and I want to delete this asset, right? It comes up and it's like, are you sure you want to do that? If you've ever used this asset, then that breaks those projects. They can't go back and reuse it. And it says, we recommend replacing this asset in those projects before you delete it. Now, I'm going to cancel this because, of course, I don't want to delete anything in that in my library. So just realize Camtasia does warn you, but if you put something in the library, chances are you'll want to leave it in the library for as long as you're using that version of Camtasia. Okay, let's jump back over to our question or our screen and our slides, and that was the library. Next thing that we have are presets. So I use presets specifically, like if I go to, let's go to annotations and sketch motion, I like to use, let me go over here. I like to use a sketch box. And so if I grab a sketch box and move that over here, when I use a sketch box on a dark background, what I prefer is for that sketch box to be yellow. And so I would go in here and I would say, all the time I would go, well, yeah, I want it to be, nice bright yellow, or maybe not quite that bright, maybe a little bit less intense yellow, and maybe that's a little green, so I'll drop it down to more yellow. I say, okay, yeah, this is the box I want to use, or maybe I actually even want it to be smaller or whatever. So I choose this, I create something based on the assets that already exist. But I've customized it for myself. When I do that, now I want to say, I don't want to have to customize this every time. So here in the upper right, I can click this plus to add a preset. And a preset, again, is a user preset that we've determined that we want to use. So if you look over here, you already see a yellow one. So just for demo purposes, let's say I want to do more of a light green asset. And so now I'll click this plus sign here in the upper right. And when I do, now you see in the left that it added a preset for that green rectangle. And the advantage to that is that I can go back and reuse this in future projects without having to go in and find the exact green that I used before. It's always available to me here in the preset. So that's why we could use this. That's why we would want to do this, is so we can find the elements that we want, that we've customized, and just get them faster. So if you have specific types of assets, a specific type of text box, for example, I could grab this text box here and I could say, well, I like to use the Lado font all the time. So I would scroll down to Lado, find Lado, and, whatever. I like to use 120 point font. Okay, fine. So that's great. And I say, I want to use that all the time. So I'm going to add that to my presets. And so here we go. Now in my callouts, I have a user selection, right? A user area. And if I need that asset, I can use that. Or if I have this, wow, is that exactly the same? That's kind of funny. Oh, there we go. Okay, so this one's at 256. So this is the one I just added. This one is much larger at 256. So those assets are available as presets inside Camtasia because we've saved them that way. Now, if you didn't want those, so let's say, for example, I no longer want this user preset, I can just right-click this and I can say, let's delete this. I'm not using that green anymore. I don't want that anymore. And if that was a mistake, of course, I can just go back. I can click on the green. I can click add, and now it's back. So I can even reuse things from previous projects. I'll go ahead and delete that. But if you're thinking about different projects that you've worked on in the past and you said, oh, I've created something, it was like, 3 months ago or whatever. Can I use that as a preset? Yes. If you've created some sort of annotation, you can just now in 2020, Camtasia 2020, you can add that as a preset and use that asset going forward. Okay, we're nearing the end. Favorites, I want to talk about favorites real quick. So it's similar to presets. While I'm doing this, I'm going to mention if you have questions, go ahead and throw those in the chat. Aloni Toots, I see that you have put in a chat. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. If you do have a question, go ahead and throw it in the chat at this time. I'm almost near the end. I have a couple more things and then I'll get to your questions if you have something that you want me to answer live. But favorites is what I want to talk about next. So favorites is when I go over to Camtasia, I have this favorites area. So I can click that, or if I let my mouse rest over top of that, we can press the F key for favorites. And here you say, well, those are a couple of things. Wait, didn't you already have that? But favorites aren't just these assets. So for example, I could grab a lot of different things. I could really grab anything. If I wanted to grab, let's say, a behavior, and there's a specific behavior I want to use. So let me click on behaviors, like, this behavior I'll put on here. And, I'll customize this behavior to say, I really want bounce in and bounce out. Or there's not even a fly out. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to change all these. Enduring. I want pop-up. This would be awful. I would never use this. But if I wanted to, I could say, all right, let's add this behavior. And it's going to add a behavior preset. And I'm going to call this one, demo, so I can see where to delete that. So here's my demo preset. When I look at this and I put my mouse over it, I see favorites has a star by it. And I see the mouse cursor in the upper left also has a star by it. And so all I need to do to add this to favorites is to click this star. And now when I go to favorites, I see that behavior here in my favorites. So whereas annotations or users, what do I want to say? The user presets are certain types of things. Favorites can be a lot of different things. So I wouldn't have to necessarily even click annotations to find what I was looking for, or what was the other thing? So if I wanted to go here and I said, oh, I want this to be a favorite, I can click this, add that as a favorite. So now I can get a sketch box, the yellow sketch box I want, and text that I want, and a behavior, and just add all these different things over here to that area called favorites. And it's just clicking that star button in the upper right to collect your favorites there. Now, one of the suggestions I'm going to make is making sure that you limit your favorites to those that you're truly using all the time. It could be possible for you to say, oh, I love, all 60 of these things and I want to put them all in favorites. Now you're kind of maybe defeating the purpose of what favorites is there for. So I use it as a quick area if I need to go and grab something that I use all the time. So in your mind, think of favorites as like your top 10, and that's it. You're only allowed to put 10 things in here. What are the 10 things you use all the time? Go ahead and throw those into favorites. All right. And then the last element to talk about is themes. So themes in Camtasia, if we jump over there, we're thinking about color schemes typically. So if I want to add an annotation, and specifically I want to add a rectangle, I can grab this rectangle and I can bring it in, but I want it to be a very specific color that uses, that's from my palette. So in here, I see there's an option for themes, and I can say select theme, and I want to use the Cam Answers theme. And in the Cam Answers theme, I have a few different colors that I can use. So if I go here and I choose Cam Answers, it says, okay, well, you have this white, you have this gold, you have this, green. And I say, yeah, actually the green is the one that I'm looking for. So these themes let me find the exact color that I want to use. To create that, we'll go up to File and Manage Themes. So I can click Manage Themes. And Audio Helper is the one that I have there, but I said, if I wanted Cam Answers, I can choose that. I have a foreground for my text color, which is just a little off-white. Then I have the blue, green, and gold, or maybe mustard, maybe it's not quite gold, that I would use for my three major colors in this theme. If I wanted to have a specific font, hey, look at that. I told you I like Lado. Here's proof. I put Lado in my theme. And then if there's a logo, I could add that as well. But for now, this is how I use themes. It's just a way for me to collect specifically colors that I want to use and text, or I should say fonts, that I'm using in my projects all the time, just to be consistent. If I want, I can click plus here to add a theme, and I can create a new theme. I can create a demo theme. I'm not going to do that. Well, I'll do that just to show you real quick. There's the demo theme. And then it says, okay, go ahead and choose your colors. And I say, oh, okay, great. I want this kind of turquoise color, and I want this magenta-like color, and I want this yellow. I don't know. So there, all right, CMYK, almost, right? If you're familiar with that. Okay, so there are, 4 colors that I want to use for my scheme. All I need to do is click Save. And now that theme, I should say theme, not scheme. Now that theme is done. And if I wanted to, I can select this rectangle and I say, oh, I'd really rather have the demo theme, and I want this cyan looking color. So that's how we use themes. I'll remind you that in the upper left, we can go and we can export a package that includes templates like Free Lesson Friday and the themes like the demo theme that I just did, and a library like my default library, and the shortcuts that I use if I did shortcuts, which I guess I didn't talk about shortcuts, but those are customizing your keyboard. And you can export your favorites. So I can export all of those into a single package, click export. I'm not going to do that, but I can then make that available to anybody in my organization or outside my organization. So I am at the end almost. I have one more thing. So when I created this slide, I looked at the element that was there in the middle, and I thought, oh, that kind of looks like a spider. And I'm like, oh, I got a really cool picture of a spider earlier this year. So if you don't like spiders, look away. But I just wanted to share this picture because I thought this looked pretty cool. So this was the spider it's actually really tiny. It's like less than an inch, or maybe around an inch in size. That was just on a small branch on my in my backyard. And I took this picture with my cell phone, and it just looked awesome. So if you don't like that, then I will just go over to this last slide here. So it's off the screen. If you wanted to look away, you can look back now. So anyway, I just thought that was a cool thing to share. It has nothing to do with Camtasia, but I was just like, man, that's a really cool picture that I got with my smartphone. So that's all I have for you. I don't see any questions in here for live chat. If you have questions, be sure to let me know. I would be happy to answer your questions. I'll be here for as long as there are people tuning in. So thanks for joining me today. If you have questions, ask. And if not, I'll see you in another video. Thank you. So long.